Today, as we publish this video, we commemorate 31 years since Freddie Mercury's death and celebrate 47 years since Queen started a 9-week run at #1 on the UK singles chart with Bohemian Rhapsody. This is dedicated to Freddie, to Queen, and to all who love their music. So I've enjoyed spending some time with this song. It's creative, imaginative, dynamic. It's something that really engages the listener and pulls us in because of that. And because I understand that this is such an iconic song, and that it was really Freddie Mercury's creation, I thought it would be a good opportunity to become a bit more familiar with his story. So I took the time to watch the movie called Bohemian Rhapsody, in addition to reading whatever I could find online that people have said about this song in particular. It's interesting to me that a song like this, which is so unique and atypical for rock music, yet is so well known and has been around for such a long time, doesn't have more people commenting on the musical design of it. Because from my perspective, that's a huge part of what makes it work so well. As I was poking around on the internet, reading blogs and comments and various articles about Bohemian Rhapsody, I saw a lot of attention focused on trying to decode the meaning of the lyrics, but when it came to looking at the actual music, it was usually treated as being subservient to the lyrics, which kind of sets us up for some rather random and unsupportable musical conclusions. Of course, some music is subservient to the lyrics and should be understood that way. But I'm accustomed to looking at the music itself to see first what it has to say, whether it directs us to understand the lyrics in a certain light. And I think that becomes really helpful to us in a song like this. So that is what I'd like to do today. So let's start at the very beginning, a very good place to start, with the title, Bohemian Rhapsody. Because of my background, it didn't even cross my mind that there could be some confusion as to what the title is referencing. I mean, Rhapsody is just that, a rhapsody. But then, as I was reading what other people had to say about it, it suddenly dawned on me. Of course it could be confusing, because not everyone thinks of a musical form when they hear the word rhapsody. But in music, that word describes a specific musical format. A single movement work that is episodic, meaning there are clearly distinct groups of musical ideas, and which features highly contrasting moods, which is just exactly how Bohemian Rhapsody is designed. A famous set of rhapsodies would be something like Liszt's Hungarian Rhapsodies, and I'll put a link in the description for you to hear one of the best known. You'll probably recognize parts of it right away when you hear it, because it's been quoted so often for so many things, even cartoons. In fact, as I think about it, I would be unsurprised if I were to find out that Bohemian Rhapsody is playing with Liszt's title a bit, because Bohemian means not only socially unconventional in an artistic way, but also is a historical country. So just as Liszt wrote a Hungarian Rhapsody, now along comes Freddie Mercury, and he has written a Bohemian Rhapsody, a piece of music identifying a certain type of lifestyle as an almost national identity in itself. Now, as with any national identity, there must be myths, legends, heroes, epic stories as part of its history. And here is where I think we can be helped by looking at the music itself. As a lot of you have written in your comments, this song doesn't follow the standard verse-chorus format. Not only that, but it's long too. So how did it become so successful? What makes it work? There are plenty of songs out there which have random, wild contrasts, interestingly enigmatic lyrics, quirkily imaginative musical ideas, kind of long, but listening to them, nobody says, This should have topped the charts, but Bohemian Rhapsody? I'm not at all surprised that it did. Of course, aside from the fact that the producers and programmers were all forced to step out of the way and give it a chance, that is the achievement right there, in my mind. You see, we humans thrive on familiarity, and patterns breed familiarity. A great artist knows how to use that craving for pattern, predictability, familiarity, to create a work that impacts us in powerful ways. And while the verse-chorus format is one very common pattern for us, I will argue that there is a pattern here. Something ancient, even older than the verse-chorus pattern that we all recognize so quickly now. And this ancient pattern is built into us in such a way that even if you don't recognize its presence, you still feel its effectiveness. You might think that Bohemian Rhapsody is unpredictable, random, haphazard, but underneath all of that, there is a form that we all know and love, and which we often find in ancient sagas and mythologies, religious stories, heroic literature, movies, novels. The story of a protagonist who goes on an adventure, triumphs in crisis, and comes out the other side having been transformed. See how many stories you can recall right now which follow this format. And before we jump and say this is a literary format unrelated to music, let's remind ourselves of opera, which most of the time sets these kinds of stories to music. Yes, this song does have some amusing mimicry of opera, but I would not claim that this parodying is what makes us relate it to an operatic sense. But we can say it's operatic because of the way it dramatizes, exposes, and delves deeply into a human experience in a manner which is not only entertaining, but also highly symbolic and profoundly meaningful. Let's take a quick walk through Bohemian Rhapsody with this idea in mind and see how it influences our way of relating to the music. First, we have this fabulous barbershop-style opening, which is purely vocal, no instruments whatsoever, and features some wonderfully expressive harmonies. Setting the first lines in this way, starkly naked vocal harmonies, makes us feel as if the protagonist has just realized he made a mistake. His head is swirling with the implications, and he can't really come to grips with the fact that there's no going back. Is this a dream? Is it real? It's real, but he feels as if he's in a dreamlike bubble, and if only it would just burst and he'd be back in his old world. But no, he's truly lost everything by what he just did. There's no waking up from this nightmare. The piano sneaks in, gradually building presence, helping us to transition to the ballad episode. Now, piano ballads were a dime a dozen in the popular music of a century ago. And even now, whenever there's a ballad-style piano piece in a movie or something like that, chances are it's conveying a moment of contemplation. So here, musically, our protagonist transitions out of his initial state of amazed disorientation to a contemplative mode in which he faces and then endeavors to accept his actions and the fate which he has brought upon himself. But then, of course, there's his responsibility and connection to those close to him, and what it will do to them. That's harder to accept. I could easily play this on the piano like Freddie Mercury did, but I think you'll be surprised at how beautiful it sounds on the harp. And so I want to play it for you here and show you a little bit of what it's doing musically for us. The motivic pattern of this passage is built on simple chords like a B flat. But this note that's emphasized at the top and is brought out and leaned into doesn't belong to the chord itself. It has to settle down to here to harmonize with the chord. And so when we have that conflict, that dissonance, it makes us feel a certain deep emotional reaction and turns it kind of introspective. Like we're watching somebody playing a calm piece, and this is telling us that they're really turning inwards and thinking and processing something within themselves, reflecting. And we hear that happening over the course of this passage, multiple places, over various different harmonies, chords within this section. I'm going to play it at the harp here, and I just want you to listen and see if you can feel that leaning on the dissonant note, and see how it affects you and your relationship with the music. And if you're curious, here's how the music score looks after I've marked it up to make it playable on the harp, including all the pedal changes and all of that. It's a bit different than playing it on the piano. But you can hear, even on the harp or in the piano in the original recording, how those notes that are leaned upon give it this sense of emotion and at the same time introspection. And then as the instruments add in, one at a time, right on cue with significant statements in the lyrics, and we hear his voice increasing in intensity, it's telling us that a conflict is building within him. We feel the anguish and the struggle, which is also reflected in lines of the lyrics like, "Sometimes I wish I'd never been born at all." And our protagonist begins to take on heroic proportions in this struggle. We feel a tortured determination developing. It's not articulated yet in the lyrics, but the musical elements are suggesting its arrival is imminent. We almost expect our protagonist to stand up and say, "I'm going to fight to live." But not so fast. Here comes the guitar solo, and it continues the agonized wrestling with fate, singing the struggle, rising, falling, then stepping higher and even a bit higher, as if our protagonist is reaching the highest pitch of nervous tension. And then, finally, exhausted, it's as if he falls in a heap on the floor. But he has chosen his path, to remain true to himself. And that decision sends us immediately into the next chapter. And we hear the piano. Ding, 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 ding. I see a little silhouette of a man. That's That's what is commonly perceived as the beginning of an operatic parody in this piece of music. It is funny, right? I laughed when I first heard it. But after spending some time with this piece, I don't laugh so much at this point anymore, because I believe that this is an incredible moment in the story. You see, opera has this interesting way of tackling some of the toughest, darkest subjects known to humanity, and it does so by treating them with a bit of playfulness. After all, opera developed as entertainment. People didn't go to the opera house to be serious. So these dark experiences, tragic events, horrible outcomes, human nature both heroically self-sacrificing and hideously selfish, they're all handled in a humorous, even irreverent manner, with plenty of over-the-top theatrics to carry it along. I read that Freddie Mercury himself said it bore thematic similarities to Faust. And it so happens that at this very moment in the music, our protagonist is facing his demons. Whether they are internal or external demons depends on what you think the story is all about, but regardless, there are demons to be faced. So here, having committed to his course, he finds himself going through hell bareheaded, as the saying goes, with thunderbolts and lightning and all the rest. He's terrified. He sees no way out, and the music helps us know this. Notice the random voices coming from all different directions, wildly leaping from lower ranges to ear-piercingly shrill, a single voice to a whole massed chorus. He's in the dark. The devils are gathered around him. He can't see them, but he can hear them. He can feel them, mocking, daring, threatening. And then we hear his own voice, shivering in fear, repeating, "Easy come, easy go," sticking to the truth of who he is, trying to reassure and steady himself in spite of his terror. You can't help but hear the self-doubt in his voice. But he doesn't retreat. Then the surrounding voices settle into two camps, one urging for his release, the other refusing to let him go. And when you listen to the music, notice how these are pitched in two different ranges, high and low. It's a common musical effect when we want to portray conversation, discussion, argument, as well as distance. Whether these are his inner voices or the voices of society and other onlookers, well, personally, I tend to think it's representing both, because of how the chorus, begging for his release, switches from third person, "let him go," to first person, "let me go." But it's yours to choose according to your understanding of the story. This musical argument devolves into chaos, and we end up with the protagonist exclaiming, "Mamma mia!" in frustrated exasperation, but that is also the point where the music finally tells us he is climbing out of this hellhole, with the wonderfully triumphant, celebratory, "Beelzebub has a devil put aside for me." It's as if our protagonist has decided to crush his fears under his own feet, march through the accusing crowd with head held high, walk to the door of freedom. Immediately, the band takes over, especially the guitar and drums, and there's a real musical power moment. Now, at this point, our protagonist turns in triumph to laugh and taunt his tormentors, standing above them now. "So you think you can stop me and spit in my eye, leave me to die?" Notice how the guitar is climbing, climbing, climbing to freedom, and the drum carries on freely as well, without a hint of reservation. The voice, too, holds the sound of authority, confidence, ownership. He's no longer conflicted or afraid or weak. He knows who he is, and he owns it. And at this point, we return to an idea which was expressed at the beginning. nothing really matters to me. But now it sounds so different because having gone through this transformational experience, this person can now say it with a deeper meaning. He's no longer a person with merely big ideas of independence, but instead, he's truly independent, self-owned, no longer revolting against society, but instead simply marching to the beat of his own drum, with or without society as they please. Whether they follow or care is their problem, not his. And here comes the piano ballad again. Not merely musical thematic glue to hold it all together, although it certainly does help with that, but also, again, introspective, reflective, as if he is contemplating where he is now, and truly, nothing matters. He's content with himself, with the world, with his position. As the song comes to an end, the guitar and piano work together, weaving through and around the voice to create an all-pervading sense of peace and harmony. If you want to support my journey on this channel and at the same time to learn more about music theory and composition techniques, even if you're a total beginner, check out my membership community on Patreon or Ko-fi, where I am presenting a music theory course designed to take absolute beginners all the way to the point that they can write and arrange their own music, understand all music better, and even unlock some of the classical music world. Obviously, we could go on digging into this piece in other ways too. We could analyze the chords, motifs, lyrics, and each of those would give us more details about the song. But understanding music isn't only about labeling each element. We need to look at the design of the whole as well. Otherwise, we're likely to miss the forest because of all the trees. So having done that now, we can better understand why it is that we love this song, why it seems to defy all odds and shoot to the top of the charts, why it remains a classic. We can also understand why many songs simply don't succeed like this one. For example, if you have watched my review of Graves by Caligula's Horse, you'll remember that I was underwhelmed by its random shifts and changes. It will never be what Bohemian Rhapsody is, simply because it doesn't have a solid compositional structure behind it, nor does it meet the very human needs of entertainment, depth, and relatable struggle. To wrap it up, I just want to make a few more observations and comments. As I said at the beginning, I think the title is key in helping us decide how to interpret this piece. Historically, artists and freethinkers have lived on the fringes of society. There, in their own communities, they could express themselves as they saw fit, and because they were artists, their nonconformist tendencies were tolerated, so long as they didn't invade the comfortable standards of society as a whole. But with the developments in the 20th century, that little bohemian world became more visible to the public. And I think especially in popular music, the artists were more easily perceived to be a threat because they were no longer outsiders, but of the people. And so, being of the people, they were expected to conform to the same social standards that were considered acceptable in general. That, of course, caused problems, especially for someone like Freddie, whose sexuality, to put it mildly, didn't conform to what was acceptable at the time. I tend to think that this song came about because of his personal experience, and it's very easy to interpret it biographically. He's just killed a man, destroyed his normal life as a man in society, put a gun to his head, pulled the trigger, now he's dead. We could even read something sexual into the gun reference if we want to. Life had just begun, now I've thrown it all away. He's taken a path that will destroy not only his life in society, but very likely even his career, because that career is not supported by some aristocratic patron who values art regardless of the artist's personal lifestyle. Instead, it's dependent on the masses of society wanting to pay to hear and see him, and they won't be so accommodating. But it doesn't have to be about homosexuality. And this, too, is one of the reasons for the success of the song. We sense the story in our own lives, in the lives of those around us. Maybe we don't fully get what the song is about, but the format is there to pull us in. It fascinates us. We find it compelling, entertaining, intriguing, heroic, inspiring, and we have to hear it again. We have to share it with our friends. And that is the secret, I think, to its success. We love it as we used to love opera. It's funny, but it's profound. It feeds us as humans. Bohemian Rhapsody was the winner of last month's community poll. Thank you for voting, and thank you for adding to my musical plate such a wonderful work of art. The poll is still on for next month's song of your choice. It includes 5 new-to-me artists who have anniversaries or other special dates coming up in December. Frank Zappa, Little Richard, the Eagles, John Lennon, and Joe Cocker. If you haven't yet, do go there and vote for your favorite band. And remember to drop a comment with your song of choice. Also, if you want to receive notifications when I post new content, click the little bell next to the subscribe button. And if you haven't seen my first listen of Bohemian Rhapsody, it's a must. Click this link, it will take you there, and you will get to enjoy with me my first experience hearing it. I'll see you soon.